Hey, welcome back. Today I want to go over the if node. The if node is similar to the node we just covered in the previous video, which I'll put in the video description, called the question mark colon or conditional node, but it's used in a different context, and so I want to do a video on both in quick succession so that I can illustrate the difference in the video. If you have any questions about these two nodes or when to use them, do let me know, as this concept can get a little bit blurry sometimes. But let's get started on how the node works, and I'll talk about it as we go along. So I'm going to hover into Smooth POV here, and first of all show you a nice simple setup with the node. So I'm going to grab a LogiX tooltip here and equip it. I'm going to open up the node browser here, and I'm going to go to Flow, which is where you can find the if nodes. So I'm going to double trigger or double primary to get into there, and I'm going to double primary select the if node, and then double primary again to get into the world. The if node has two inputs, 1, 2, and two outputs, 1, 2. The first input is a run input. You can see that by putting the tool over it, you'll see run. And the second input is called a conditional. So we can pull out the run by putting our tip in and pushing secondary. And we can pull out a condition by putting our tip in, holding primary, and tapping secondary. Same for the output. We can put in our tip, hold trigger, and push secondary. Put in the tip, hold trigger, and push secondary. So now we've got everything out as display nodes or input nodes so that we can see what's going on. So what the if node does is it will send an output to the top here if this condition is true, or an output to the bottom here if this input is false. So right now this input is false, and so if I start this if with a pulse, you'll see that we get an output to the bottom chain here. If I change this input to a true by clicking on the false once, so it says true, you'll now see that I will get an output up the top here. I can change this back to false, and we'll get an input over here. Or an output, sorry. I'm interchanging the words here. It's been a long day. Hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions. So with that being said, there's an example setup of the node. We're now going to show it being used in a few sort of semi-real-world applications. I don't have any sort of really complicated stuff to use it with. I wanted to keep things very simple, but I do have some examples that should help you understand it a little bit more. Let's go over them. They're over here. So first one that we have here is a button and a checkbox. And what I want to do is that when the button is pushed, if the checkbox is on, I want the output to go to the top, and if the checkbox is off, I want the output to go to the bottom. So to do that, we're going to need to pull out interface cards for both the button and the checkbox. Let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and equip the inspector tip here, or the developer tip. I'm going to secondary select the button, open the inspector, and I'm going to equip my LogiX tip here. I'm going to grab the Neos button and push secondary to get a button interface card. Then I'm going to inspect the checkbox. And I'm going to grab the checkbox and push secondary to get the checkbox interface card. And those are the interface cards that we'll need. And then I'm going to need just one more node to hook this all up, and that is the button events node. I'll put a video link in the description for button events to explain that more, but it's essentially a node which transforms a button into some impulses, which is what we need. That can be found inside interaction, button events. So we're going to connect these up, and then we're going to hook just the top input to the top of the if node here. As for the checkbox, there is this great is checked field, and we can pull this out and push secondary to see that it is false. And when I check it, it returns to true, and false, and true, and false. So I can plug is checked into the input on the if. So now, when I push the button, the bottom impulse is firing currently because the checkbox is unchecked. If I check the checkbox and push button, you'll see that the top impulse now fires. So what we're basically saying here is when the button is pushed, if the checkbox is checked, output top, otherwise output bottom. And there you go. Here's another example here. This time I have a button and a slider. I don't think I've covered the slider before, but it's essentially a value that's represented by this sliding bar. So at the top here is its maximum value, and at the bottom here is its minimum value. And what we're going to do is make it so that when the slider is at halfway or above halfway, it's going to go to the top output, and when it's below halfway, it's going to be at the bottom output. So let's take a look at the slider by grabbing my developer tooltip here. Secondary pushing on the slider and opening an inspector. And we'll see the slider here. I'm going to pull out an interface card for it. And then we'll pull out an interface card again for the button here by secondary selecting it, grabbing the nearest button, and secondary pushing to get the interface card. So with the slider, you'll see that there is a value output here, and we can drag this out with primary and push secondary to see the value. And so you can see here when I drag it up, it goes between 1 and 0. So halfway is around about 0.5. So what we want to do is check if this value is greater than 0.5. So to do that, we're going to go to the node browser, and we're going to go to operators, and we're going to grab the greater than operator, which is here, greater than. And we're going to spawn that in the world. The greater than takes two values. So the first value is going to be the value of our slider, and then the second value is going to be the target value, in this case 0.5. So now if I move things around a little bit for clarity, you'll see that this is going to output true if this value, as in the value of the slider, is greater than 0.5. So right now it is because it's 1, but if I were to drop this slider down below 0.5, you'll see it returns to false. So now I'm going to plug this conditional into the if and clean up a little bit. And then we just need a button events for the button. So interaction button events, just like I did before. And then we can put the pressed in there. And so now, when this value is above half, we get an output on the top, and when it is below half, we get an output on the bottom. And there we go. I hope this has showed how the if statement, or the if node here, it's not really an if statement, if the if node here can be used to redirect the flow of your LogiX impulses. Now I want to talk about the difference between this and the $:: node a little bit. So this node should be used when you have a pre-existing impulse chain that you want to redirect, or a decision point within an impulse chain. So the decision point here is when the button is pushed. So when this button is pushed, what do we want to happen? What do we want to happen? And that's why we're using the if node here. If instead we were mathematically driving things, such as the light example I did in the $: video, then we would use $:. Avoid using the if node and impulses in general when you don't need to. I'll do a video more on that at some point, and I'll link that in the video description when I get that one done. If you've got any questions about the if node, please do let me know, or any questions indeed about anything that you've seen here, do let me know. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.